In 2021, I hammock camped the entire length of the Appalachian Trail. So here I am to answer some pros, cons, and myths. First, let's hit the pros. The main reason why I got a hammock and most people get a hammock is because they are so much more comfortable. The only reason why people sometimes think different is because they aren't setting them up correctly. It's important that you don't set up a hammock with too much slack or too little slack, otherwise you'll be in too deep of a V or stiff as a board. Next, if you know how to set your hammock up correctly and you're using the correct size tarp, you will stay more dry. Unless you spring a leak, of course. But being above the ground keeps condensation off of your bag and your tarp. If you can keep your backpack inside of a trash bag, it'll stay dry on the ground. Tents, on the other hand, sometimes flood in the bathtub area. Another huge plus is that your hammock can double as a chair. It sets up really fast if you're trying to take an afternoon cat nap or sunbathe. Sometimes it feels so good to just not have to sit on the ground for a little bit. If you're trying to carry an extra small pack, it will give you a little extra leeway. Hammocks do pack down smaller and have multiple components, so you can stuff them into little crevices. Now let's do some cons. It's a posted rule that you cannot set up hammocks in any shelters. With that being said, we did end up sometimes setting up our hammocks in shelters on special occasions. We always made sure to ask people who were already in the shelter if it was okay with them, and then if more people showed up, we asked those people as well. Generally, thru hikers have a mindset that we're in this together, so no one ever said anything or was even offended. However, you should definitely never expect to stay in a shelter with a hammock, even if a storm rolls around. That brings me to my next point, which is trees. Every night you have to camp where there are trees, and they have to be the right space apart. It's not really any more difficult than finding a flat tent spot. If anything, it's actually easier, but it can be frustrating if you're trying to sleep in an area without trees, like Max Patch. Cowboy camping is a lot less enjoyable because you don't have a pad to sleep on. The only other con about hammock camping could be bugs. Hammocks are a lot more open, and unless you're carrying a bug net, you will get bit and have little creepy crawlies on you sometimes. It never bothered me a bit, and I never really woke up with anything on me. I did carry a bug net for about 2 weeks when the mosquitoes were bad, though. Now let's talk some myths. One of the things I worried about before going on trail was getting caught above tree line. There are some 5 or 10 mile sections in the Whites where you are above most of the trees, but you can always plan your day around that easily. I never had an issue with not finding trees to set up on. These areas are so windy and exposed that tent campers aren't staying there anyway. Something else that people often debate would be the weight of a hammock setup versus the weight of a tent setup. I'd like to say that they are not different whatsoever. You can find a hammock that weighs 6 ounces, straps that weigh under 4 ounces, and a tarp that weighs 7 ounces. That's about the equivalent to one of the high-tech 1-pound tents. Yes, during winter you do have to get an underquilt, but people are usually getting thicker, heavier sleeping bags at the same time, so the weight still stays equivalent. I think the only luxury item that can sometimes throw a hammock setup higher than a tent setup would be the bug net, which again, I never really carried. And besides, a lot of people were carrying 2-pound tent setups anyway. Overall, I would highly recommend hiking the Appalachian Trail with a hammock instead of a tent. I think it was so much more comfortable, and it's so important to get a great night's sleep when your body is recovering every night. If you have any specific questions or some pros or cons to add, please leave a comment below. Thanks for watching!